get underway here. Get underway here. All right, there we go. All right, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have all of you here. Thanks for the note, Lindsay. My thought process behind this was to walk you through, especially if it's your first time, but even if it's your 10th time doing digital measures, some of the things that I've seen that can help make life the simplest for you as you're putting this together. Keep in mind, you know, it's going to look different for everyone who does this. So, you know, if you run into any snags that are specific to you, please reach out to me and let me know. And I can either help you out or I can point you towards someone who can help you out. The goal is to make this as easy and convenient for you as possible. To get to digital measures, I recommend just typing in digital measures TTU and click on the top link there. And that should put you on a screen that looks like this, and then just click on digital measures login. They're actually changing the name of digital measures, and it's now Watermark Faculty Success. But digital measures still gets you there, and I think they're going to leave that open as is. So you should arrive at a screen that looks something like this, where you've got a bunch of lines of general information, you've got a bunch of lines of teaching, scholarship research, service, engagement, annual report review process, and it seems like you've got a whole boatload of lines to click off on here, but there are really just a few of them that we want to be super focused on. So let's start out. First of all, does anyone know what these little asterisks represent here next to some of these topics? If you do, put it in the chat.
Required?
Good guess. The guess was these are the ones that are required. These are the ones that are reported to the SACS accrediting related to House Bill 2504. So any of these that pop up here show up in our 5-year review and our 10-year review, and in terms of what the state's looking at here. So make sure that you've got the ones with asterisks in reasonable shape. Most of those are not going to be difficult to do, with the exception of maybe the presentations, which we'll get into in just a little bit. And again, these presentations here are a little bit, I would say, funny in that they're important for us to report, but some of the other departments like Ag Ed and Ag Communications, they actually do their presentations as one of their primary reporting metrics, because with their proceedings, they do some level of peer review on it, and so they put those under presentations. In terms of our department, most of our presentations don't go through that same process, but you know, they're still useful to report just to show that we've got things going on. So I'll start with the asterisk ones, and then I'm going to point out a few of the ones that are not asterisk that I think you'll want to spend a little bit of time on. First of all, your personal and contact information ought to be more or less up to date. If it's not, make sure that it gets updated. For example, if you look at my photograph here, I look like I'm about 10 years younger and about 40 or 50 pounds lighter here. So I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to upload a more recent one here. Let's see, Ritchie 2021 looks like a good one. Make sure that you check it after you upload it and make sure that it's actually the picture that you want it to be. It's got to be authorized, but I pulled this off of our TTU Plant and Soil Science website. So I anticipate that I'm not going to run into any problems there. Make sure that your research or teaching interests are up to date, and then just make sure that you click save when you're finished with it. This should also be more or less up to date. Normally they plug this in when you're hired, but just make sure that it's correct. So these first few things aren't hopefully going to take very long for you to do. If you want to include other items on here, you may. Instructor qualifications. If you're already accredited to teach, you don't need to worry about that. This is primarily for people who are coming in and have not been hired into a tenure track position, but they're teaching classes. Even with our lecturers, they're approved on this. So like Vikram, you're not going to need to go in and do instructor qualifications either. All right, on the teaching, you've got an advising section here, which is going to be the number of undergraduate students that you advise and the number of graduate students that you advise. A lot of times I'll just duplicate the previous year, and then I just update the numbers that I have for this year. So right now I have 5 undergraduates, and right now I have 1 graduate student. You know, as a result, I'm spending a little bit more or a little bit less time per week advising. This is self-reported, so you know, I would recommend that you put in a number that is consistent with what you expect it's going to be taking, but you know, don't go overboard and say that you're spending 35 hours a week advising unless you're, you know, just that's all you're doing at a time. The big thing I want you to check on here and make sure that you put in students that you're a chair on or a committee member on. One thing you'll notice, for instance, with Irish, she graduated in 2021. With most of these students, there's going to be an opportunity to update it here. So I'm going to say she's completed, and then I'm going to put in, you know, the day that it was submitted. And she officially graduated about May 15th. The exact date is not going to be super critical here, but you want it to be pretty close. If you're not sure, pop in and, you know, TTU calendar, and you can actually look up the official graduation date for, well, apparently they updated it just within the last week, because before they weren't showing, let's try 2021 here. So let's see, spring of 21, graduation was May 15th. Hey, looky there. So I'm going to save that. And now she's not going to show up as a continuing student when I'm printing out my report here. So really all you have to do is make sure that these things are updated and the students automatically move to the place within your yearly document that they need to be moved.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes.
So on mine, it looks like very few of them had, even from like a number of years ago. For example, Vikram's not graduated on my list. Do I need to go back in and add the end date on all those?
Yes, I would recommend adding in end dates. And again, at the very least, put in the year and say that he's completed. That way he doesn't keep showing up as a continuing graduate student for you for, you know, into the extended future. Any other questions so far leading up to before we jump into the scheduled teaching? While you're thinking of those, just keep in mind on the general information, just check your basic material and make sure that it's up to date and correct. On the teaching, really focus on your academic advising and your theses and dissertations. The course coordinator, I find less useful in reporting than the actual scheduled teaching, which I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time on in a second here. Any questions leading up to this point? If you do, and if you don't want to blurt them out, go ahead and put it in the chat as well.
Glenn, I got a question here.
Yes.
For the directed student learning, the start date, is that the start date for you get involved in that committee or the start date of the student?
I would probably just do it in terms of when you get involved with the committee, because a lot of times I don't know exactly when a graduate student started who reaches out to me and asks me to serve on their committee. And I'm assuming that I haven't been doing a whole lot of input toward their project until they officially ask me to be on their committee. So that would be my recommendation. And just because you might put 2020 or 2021 on here, that doesn't affect the student in terms of the reporting for their advisor. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. Make sure that you take a close look at your scheduled teaching. In particular, the classes that you did this past year. For example, let's see how many students. I think I have all of these updated personally, but let me try one more and just see if I can find one that might not be updated. No, I've got them all updated. If you look at the enrollment number right here, this enrollment number is almost always going to be undercounted by digital measures. So you've got a couple of ways that you can look up the enrollment number. Number one, you can go to Banner and look up the enrollment number through there, or Blackboard and look up the enrollment number through there. Or if you're willing to trust me on it, can everyone see this Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I had Diane in Cognos run the spring 2021 and the fall 2021 enrollments. These are pulled off of the Cognos grading. So these should be the enrollments at the end of the semester on everyone who didn't drop the class. So it's still going to be a little bit less than maybe the number of students who show up at the beginning of the semester. But I find that it's a lot more accurate than the actual digital measures number here. And this just lists all the course numbers, section numbers, and the enrollment for those course and section numbers. If everyone's okay, I'll probably just send this out to the faculty as a whole. I don't think that there's any information that's strictly going to be uncomfortable for anyone to see for these different classes, but is anyone against me just sharing this with the whole department so that they can look up their own numbers? All right. Again, feel free to reach out to me and let me know in advance, because I'll probably be sending this right after the meetings. Let's see. Let me think. Does someone want to be a test case here? Who teaches 5415? Let's.
You can go to fall and I have mine open right now.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Let's see, remind me your course number, Katie.
5331.
5331. Okay, so here it says 17. Let's see what your digital measure says real quick. And again, this is actually something that I have access to and you do not strictly have access to.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna add. Mine does say 17, but it has a lock symbol to where it can't
Yes.
be.
So I have the capability, if you report your numbers to me, I can actually come into your account and
Okay.
go into here, and I could actually change the enrollment number myself. And so it, it takes about 5 seconds for me to do. It's pretty easy for me to do on this end. I think Dr. Dotre, you had me do this on yours, and it was almost instantaneous updating, correct?
Yes, it was. Now, the good news is the only ones that were wrong were spring. Summer was correct and fall was correct. So I guess I'm kind of hoping maybe whatever glitches were in the system, we're making progress.
Okay, yeah, and hopefully so. That would certainly simplify things from my end if we don't have to keep updating these as we go. Kenny, when I reached out to him in January or February about this problem, said he thought that he had it fixed in the system, but I noticed that we had issues, with a bunch of courses last year and with all of our spring courses this year. So if you see issues show up on your end, reach out to me and I'm happy to update it or send it to Kenny and I'll have him update it. But make sure that those items are correct. The actual courses should be pretty accurate, but the enrollments tend to be highly inaccurate. So make sure that these are up to date, and if not, let me know. Let's see. And then scholarship research is probably where I'm going to spend most of my time here, just to walk you through some of the easier ways to get your scholarship and research material in here. One thing to keep in mind, if someone else in the department is a lead or a corresponding author on a paper, they are probably going to be putting that paper in. So make sure that you don't duplicate what they're doing. For instance, here's one on the effect of elevated CO2 on peanut performance in semi-arid production regions. I know that Dr. Laza was the corresponding author on that one, and it looks like she's put it in. So I don't actually have to go through and enter that one in. Here's one on dicamba effects on fruiting and sensitive cotton. Dr. Dotre was the corresponding author, and so he put it in. Something that you will notice with me as I'm getting more and more into the administration role is that I almost don't even have to enter in any of my own journal articles because everybody else does it for me. But let me show you a couple of the methods that you can use to get these entered in and to get them entered in pretty quickly.
Glenn, what do the lock marks mean on some of yours?
Okay, the lock marks mean that somebody else entered in this data, and I don't have the ability to go in and edit myself. I have to rely on whoever edited it or put it in to edit it. So in this case, I was trying to look and see if it shows who entered it in, and I don't immediately see who entered it in, but probably Dr. Deb entered it in. Maybe a Tinderpal did, but I suspect probably Dr. Deb entered it in. But the locked sign means that someone else entered it in and they won't let me go in and change it. So if you see something that's incorrect and it has a lock sign next to it, email your co-authors and say, hey, whoever entered this in, will you go in and adjust whatever on it? And that'll square it up. Any of these that it shows unlocked are probably ones that I imported. And so, for instance, this one, the title looks just a little bit funny, probably because I imported it and it was trying to subscript this and it doesn't like to subscript. So Dr. Laza would then be contacting me and say, hey, you entered in my journal article and you did it wrong type thing.
No problem.
What's that?
No problem, Dr. Ritchie.
No problem. Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, if you have minor changes from one article to another, it's going to show up as multiple articles at the department and at the college level. And poor Dr. Bratcher goes through and has to try to remove all of the duplicates that we have going on. And so you'll save her some pain and grief by matching it up as well as possible and removing any duplicates that that you see here. So how many of you would find it useful if I show you real quick how to import from Google Scholar? Well, I'm going to pretend that everyone would benefit from this. There are a couple of easy ways to import into digital measures. I'll go ahead and show you one of them. And that is, first of all, go in and create your own Google Scholar account if you haven't already done it. And then I just sort by year, and I go through and I just select all of the ones for 2021. Double check and make sure that you're not accidentally selecting proceedings here or other items that are not journals. Although if you do see proceedings in here, it's not a bad way to import them, and then you can just go back in and change and say, this isn't a journal article, it's just it's a proceedings here. I'm going to export it, and I'll just export it directly to BibTeX. And it should show up like this. And I'm going to go back one more. And if you haven't downloaded Endnote, you can actually download Endnote for free on your computer through Texas Tech. So I would recommend doing that. Let me make sure that I've got a new Endnote file here just so that I don't cause myself some pain and grief here. Let's see. Give me a second. I have Endnote up on the other screen here, and it's taken a second to load. Okay, so here I have Endnote. I just downloaded this off of the Texas Tech Libraries website, and I'm just going to go here. I downloaded all these citations here, and I'm going to open them up, and they automatically open up into Endnote. And lo and behold, here they are. Now, if I select them all, I can also export them to BibTeX through here. All you do is go to File, Export. I'll keep it called Training. And then the output style is not going to default to BibTeX Export unless that's what you've been doing previously. Just select BibTeX Export in the output style, save it, and you essentially are ready to go in terms of importing them into digital measures. So now I'm going to import up here. I'm going to choose that same file that I just downloaded. I don't know if that's going to be an issue. And see how it says, okay, there are 6 publications that might be duplicates. That's because all of these have already been put into the system, and I need to make sure that I'm not duplicating them here. This one, see how it shows up as being published in 2020, and over here it shows being published in 2021. Well, I'll say this, make sure that it's accurate in here. You want to be careful not to indicate that you're like double publishing the same paper in 2 years, but I would much prefer that you have it accurate in digital measures than that you worry too much about, oh, well, you know, this one was incorrect and this is the correct one. So I'm going to import this one. See, we have a lot more detail on these ones, so I'm just going to import, skip that one, import because it's got a little bit more detail here. Yeah. So now we're through here. I'm going to click continue. And it is going to eventually populate all of these into my digital measures here. Any questions so far, just leading us to this point and how to find your files short of going in and having to enter these all in manually one at a time?
That is awesome. You can do it with everything, right? You can do it with presentations as well, as long
Yes,
as you
you
have
can.
the file.
Yes, you can. That was actually going to be my next item that I.
That is wonderful. I wish I learned that a couple of weeks ago because I did one by one, one by one.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a long time to do it all the way through if you're doing it by hand. So now it should list all of the publications that I have for this year in here. All I need to double check now is, because I did import a few of these, even though there were other ones in here, I want to make sure that I remove any that are currently in here that are duplicates. But that's one easy way to do it. Another easy way to do it that was just mentioned is if you come to import, you can also select a service like Scopus or Web of Science, and you can actually, my recommendation is to make it find everything that is related to you, but also not to find a bunch of stuff that's unrelated to you. Go to add search criteria, do affiliation, and type in Texas Tech. And on the author name, I would just put your last name here, and then I would just put 2021 in here. And, you know, lo and behold, here it has found a bunch of articles for me as well. And then I can just go in and select all of them. If there's one that is not mine, for instance, well, let's see. This one's mine, but I don't know if I want to take credit for it, so I'm going to take it off type thing. You have some flexibility before it actually imports here. Now, since I just imported all of these using another method, I'm going to cancel import here. But by and large, it's as easy as that. And the nice thing is it'll actually look for author names when you're doing it this way who are with Texas Tech, and it'll link them up, and you don't have to go in and manually find them. So this, I think, is one of the more useful and painless items that you run into when you're doing this here. Let's see. I know that I'm still going to have a few of these that are duplicates, but you know, by and large, I don't want to spend time, you know, fixing my material up while you're sitting here waiting. A few of the other items, so that's how you enter in your intellectual contributions. Your presentations, it's going to be fairly similar. Oh, one other thing on your intellectual contributions, if you do enter one in manually, make sure that you go in and double check and make sure that it is selected as peer reviewed. And even if you import it, make sure that it's selected as peer reviewed, because if you put yes on peer reviewed, it's going to show up under your peer reviewed academic publications. And if you don't put anything on there, it's going to show up as not peer reviewed. So that's one of the major issues that I see with the cleanup that I have to be doing on this end. Let's see. So make sure that you have all these set to peer reviewed. And just to show you what happens, because I know I've done some of these and I haven't done other ones here. If I come to my report and I want to run my annual faculty report for College of Agriculture here. I don't know why it's defaulting to 2019. I'll just set this for 2021. And I want to, if I can, there's a way that I can filter it down just to me. And I'm trying to remember how to do that. You're not going to see the option for report options or for whom to include. It's just going to print your material out here. But, oh, I think it's through here. I can select who I want to do it for. So I can actually now print out all of your reports, or it just doesn't give me that option. But I can actually look at all of your reports at once. And as you update things into January, it'll automatically update it into the system here. Let's see. Has actually become a little bit less user-friendly for me just within the last little bit. So no one look at my evaluation scores. If I come down to my annual manuscripts published, right now it shows that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 published peer-reviewed manuscripts. And I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 non-peer-reviewed manuscripts. So first of all, I don't have quite that many manuscripts. I've got some duplication still in here. But second, I'm not it's not crediting me with these being refereed publications right now because I haven't gone in and selected the peer-reviewed option in here. So make sure whether you're importing or you're entering it manually, go into intellectual contributions, and on each of these go into the actual contribution and look and make sure that you have it selected as peer-reviewed. That's going to save you a lot of headaches, and it's going to save me a lot of headaches. And also make sure that if you're importing a bunch of preceding stuff that's not peer-reviewed, make sure that you don't click that it's peer-reviewed, because we want to be able to know, because peer-reviewed articles are a lot different than presenting at a meeting in terms of the rigor that they go through in terms of publication. All right, any additional questions? Let me check the chat real quick. Okay, none yet. Put your papers under intellectual contributions and your posters and oral presentations under presentations here. The next major thing that I want to point out is your contracts, grants, and sponsored research. And there are a few items that I would like to point out on here. First of all, let me go back to my faculty report here and see what it has for my grants here. It doesn't look like I have any grants. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is a current one. This is a current one. Some of these here are current ones, but a lot of times you may see an old one from 2016 or 2017, or for instance, I have Indigo field research here. It's still active now, but let's say that it's not here. How do I get rid of this and get rid of any zombie, research stuff that I have going on? The way that you do that is you need to go into the actual edit of it here, and you need to set an end date on here. So you come to the award end date and make sure that the end date is, when you ended the project. Especially if you've got one that's 4 or 5 years old, I'm going to be asking you when you come in for your annual evaluation, whether that's a project that's ongoing or if it's one that's not, because it's nice to clear things up once once you're finished with the project. You don't want it hanging over your head in digital measures here. Any other questions on the start date or end date? Or one other thing I would mention in here is on these grants, you'll notice most of them are locked here. That's because they are populated through digital or through ORS. So, I can't go in and, edit and say, oh, well, this NSF grant that I was a partner on, it wasn't for, 1.2 million, it was for 8.9 million. And then, after my report's run, I go back and change it to the right number. They don't give you a lot of options here. It's also a little bit frustrating because a lot of times they don't enter all of the grants for the year until after December 31st. So you may see a few missing here. One option, and Dr. Dotre has done this, is you can add new and put the information in so that it shows up. And then after it populates from ORS, then you can go back in and delete it at that point. That's one way to do it. Obviously, that's a little bit of extra work, and it gives you the flexibility of being able to get your report done sooner and to have a little bit more control over what you're doing. But it's not something that you strictly have to do. It's just that you have to rely on ORS to do the rest of the work on that. Any questions on contracts, grants, and sponsored research? I've got a question for all of you. What if you have a project that you're doing with a company and they're doing it, through an unrestricted gift or something like that, as opposed to as an official grant that runs through ORS? Or do we even do those types of things?
So you select in-kind and donation?
Yes. Let me see if I can go back to my main menu here. So you have an option here, and was that in the same section here? Is there another section that is in-kind donations? That's one that I didn't refresh on like I should have. Let me go back.
I think Glenn, in the contract grant research type, the second.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let me go back to
Any grant and
this one, which I have some control over. And
there, the second, contract grant research type. There you have a cross. You have written the grant. The second box from the top.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Got it. So in this case, this one I ran through ORS, but if I had just made that, if I had done that directly with the company, you can do it either as a contract or as an in-kind / donation, depending on how you had it set up there. Great catch on that.
Glenn,
Yes.
do I need to designate between money that ran through tech or AgriLife? How do I handle it? Because I'm guessing ones that go through ORS automatically populate, right?
Yes, the ones through ORS populate. My recommendation would be that you put the other ones in manually here, and that you just make a notation here, probably, just looking at the options here. Maybe on the sponsoring organization, put the sponsoring organization and then put in parentheses, Texas A&M AgriLife. That way you'll get credit for it when I put together your annual report, but we'll be able to look at those and say, okay, yeah, this is one that the faculty member gets credit for it, but we're not going to count it toward the total departmental dollars.
Okay.
The CV should say where the money is. I guess I've not
Yes.
gone to that extra step. If it's an extra grant, it's in there. It should be counted regardless, I think.
Yeah.
And the CV specifies if it's sitting with extension, research, or tech.
Yeah. I mean, just make sure that it's clear to me when I'm going through, because usually when I do your annual review, I'm going to take a combination of your annual report, which you produce through digital measures. And then I'm going to pull up your CV and I'm going to try to look at both of those. Usually I start with the annual report, and then where I have questions, I look at your CV, but it's a lot cleaner. If, it's more likely that I'll miss things trying to read through a 40-page CV than to read through a 6 or 7 page annual report. So, if you have it in one or the other, that's good. If you want to make sure that I don't get confused, put something in here just so that, or, CCV or something like that. And I do my very best, but you would be amazed after reading, dozens of these, how, the first 5 of you that I do, I'm super sharp. And by the last person that I do, my eyes are starting to cross a little bit. So if you set it up with me late, like, mid-March, then, count on making sure that I got everything correct here with your grants and sponsored research. Let's see. Non-sponsored research is going to be things that you didn't get money for. And so if you're doing some type of a contract that you're getting money, don't put it as non-sponsored research. This is, this is another way of showing some of the things that you're doing that you may not necessarily put under service, but are going to be connected with, with your role in your position. In terms of your self-appraisal and goals, it's nice to put some of that in there, just because that's what I look to see where your program is targeted to go over the next year. Usually, I'm looking to that, for instance, I had goals for 2020 or that I put in leading into 2021. I go back personally and look to see how well I did in terms of meeting those goals. And, my goal as a department chair is to look moving forward, but, it's also an opportunity if numbers look a little bit out of whack, I'm going to be looking to some of these things here, like the appraisal and goals and the COVID impacts, just as an opportunity for you to describe, what went well or what you ran into that might necessarily or might not necessarily be explained by the actual numbers, or, some of these individual items that you're plugging into a very set, format here. All right, let me open it up. Questions from any or all of you relative to your annual reports?
Glenn, I got a question. This is Winchuan.
Yes.
When we enter the dates into the contracts grants in those fields, for a particular year's annual report. So which one do we need to enter right so to take the credit for that particular year? When you do the total.
Yeah. In order for it to show up for this particular year, you want to make sure that the award start date and the award end date are correct. The award notice is not applicable to us. Submitted for funding is not applicable in terms of the actual awarding. You're looking for the award start date and the award end date. A lot of times I'll put my project start date and project end date to be the same just for consistency's sake. But if I recall correctly, let's see, this is actually 2020. It should automatically update within the system there. So let's see. Oh, on the House Bill 2504, if you want it reported to the state, which for most of our stuff, the answer is yes, make sure that this is clicked yes on here as well. And this is one of those things that takes forever to find. This just shows you when I talk about having to enter in things manually and how long it takes. This is a good example here, and you can't just, oh, actually, there we go. There we go. All right, so that's essentially how you do the grants. The ones that have the locks on them, you don't have the ability to change, but make sure that these are up to date on here. Other questions? Question for you: what do you do, for instance, on the scheduled teaching? When I come into agronomic plant science, it doesn't actually show my, well, let me go back to my report here. Doesn't show my scores for this fall. So what do I do in that case?
Enter manually?
Yeah, just do your report, enter it manually, and then submit your report as is. I don't recommend entering a bunch of stuff manually in here, just because if it shows up manually in here, it doesn't go to the dean's office. But evaluations are a fair game in terms of entering it manually. Obviously, don't enter it manually yet for this fall because we haven't received them yet. But when they do come through, that's one that is fair game for entering it manually. Other questions?
Glenn, anything about that engagement, Raiders engaged survey?
Let's see.
I also had just 18 and 19.
Yeah. Apparently 18 and 19 are when we were being pushed to do it. If you want to make sure that you're getting credit for community engagement, make sure that you put it in through here. Keep in mind that the university is looking for ways to show metrics for what you accomplish here. So, you know, if you went and spoke at your child's school, that's going to look different to them than if, for example, you were speaking at an extension meeting where, you know, you're providing value to, you know, stakeholders who, and that's quantified, you know, relatively formally. put in the things that are important here. Realize that this has a little bit of benefit in terms of being able to show what you've accomplished, but this is probably not going to be in the top 3 or 4 things that are going to be looked at. Certainly for promotion and tenure, but even in terms of the university level, simply because we don't tend to have as many formalized engagement processes within our department as a whole as a lot of the other departments have. A lot of departments have engagement set up as something that is very formalized, and they actually that's really how they show that they're getting stuff done. And in our department, largely the way that we show that we're getting stuff done is through teaching and grants and graduate students and publications.
All right, thank you.
And if I find out differently on that, I'll let you know. But that
Sure.
was the latest instructions I got at the chair meetings, were that they're getting tired of us entering in just generic stuff. And it's not that they're getting tired of it. It's just that they're not counting it the same just because we don't have the metrics by which to count it the same. Now, that could be something that maybe in 2022 we revisit and look at developing that, just so that we can strengthen what we show that we've accomplished, because it still takes time, it still takes work to get those things done.
So,
all right, go ahead.
It's Vikram. So in terms of like outreach stuff, that's kind of what we're talking about, I guess, because we do field days and
yes. If you're doing a field day, or if you're doing something else that's more formal than that, make sure that you're putting that into the Raiders Engaged survey.
Okay.
If you're a scoutmaster or a Girl Scout leader or something like that, feel free to put it in, but just be aware that we haven't set up an easy way to connect some of those things with what we do professionally. It provides value to the community, but we're essentially acting as a community member in that case, and not as an expert who is applying their expertise to the problem. Except Dr. Dotre, he's like an expert at woodland survival, so and maybe in his case, yes.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes.
Down at the very bottom right column, there's a COVID impact. Can you click on that a second?
Yes.
So how come it has 2020 there? We're still.
I think because they didn't update it from when they first put it in, which was last year. I am a little bit hesitant, unless you're asking for an extension related to COVID on promotion or promotion and tenure. I would hesitate to put a whole lot in here, not because I don't think it's important, but because our department was a lot less affected than most of the departments on campus, because when we moved into online teaching, we almost all of us already knew how to do online teaching. And so, the amount of time that I spent trying to get people up to speed on how to move to distance courses was about 20 minutes. I worked with one person in detail on how to set their class up to be on, well, actually 2 people in the department to set their classes up online, but most of you had already done it several times before, and you essentially just hopped into online mode in that. So unless you're planning to delay, for instance, our assistant professors have been given 2 opportunities to delay their promotion and tenure timeline. If you've delayed it, this is a good opportunity to fill that in. If you have not delayed it, it's probably not going to be as meaningful, unless you've had something specifically that you feel you've been penalized related to COVID. But I'll say this, I'm not, our department as a whole tend to be way more optimistic than I hear as I'm sitting with other departments. We did a training on promotion and tenure where they asked some department chairs to come in and speak. And the questions I was getting from the larger group there indicated a lot more problems and concerns there than I've found with the people that are in our department. All right, and I realize we're down to about the last 4 minutes of the time that I've committed all of you to come here. Do you have any additional questions that I can answer? If any of you have any individual questions that you'd like to reach out to me personally, feel free to send me an email or say, hey, Glenn, can we touch bases afterwards? One other thing, just those of you who have joint appointments, I've mentioned this in the past and I'll mention it again. I would recommend that you spend the most time on the institution that you have the majority of your time with your joint appointment in terms of making sure that you've got everything in exactly the way you want it. If you have a majority appointment at Texas A&M, make sure that I know what you've done so that I can put it into your evaluation, but don't feel like you've got to become a digital measures ninja. It's more important that Texas A&M is seeing the things that you're doing. I don't know, is ninja an allowable term anymore? I don't know. All right, any other questions or comments? So take home, create a Google Scholar account because it's one of the easy ways. Oh, I should have mentioned this as well. I showed you how to import from Scopus, which is really easy, or Web of Science, which is really easy. Why do I recommend that you go to Google Scholar? Because Scopus and Web of Science are both a little bit more selective in terms of what journals feed into them. And for instance, for me, I've got a few journals that don't show up on Scopus. And so the reason I use Google Scholar is it tends to grab just about everything. If it's a referee journal, sometimes even if it's not, it's going to grab it. I'd rather get everything, take out the ones that I'm not interested in than to miss, 25% of what I'm doing.
It's probably not super important, but for media contributions, is this talking about things that we've written for different media outlets or like interviews we've done and stuff like that? Because I weirdly end up with a lot of those.
Yeah, I would say in your case, Vikram, I would put them all in here. So if for example, someone is running a podcast that has some sanction from the department, go ahead and put all of those in there because that shows productivity and it's something that's relatively easy to quantify, and it's something that someday we're going to have someone from upper administration come and say, hey, we need someone who's running a podcast out of the department. Who can we recommend? And, me, as I get older and start being forgetful, I'm going to forget that Vikram has his own podcast. So I'll go to Digital Measures and find it and be able to say, oh, hey, look at all these podcasts that someone's doing. And so in a case like that, I'd go ahead and put them all in. If you do an online article for a newspaper or for a, say, cotton grower or whatever, put that in there as a popular press article or as a contribution on that end. Now, in your case, copy and paste a whole lot.
Okay, so like each episode should go in as its own entry?
I would think so. I mean, if you just say that you have a podcast, we don't really know whether you're doing that once a year or once a month
Sure.
or once a week. And ideally, I'd say go ahead and pop all of them in there because each one of them takes some production time and some visiting time.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Any other questions or comments in terms of just real quick feedback. Give me a thumbs up if you feel that this was worth an hour of your time, just so that I can game plan in terms of next year. Well, keeping doing this. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the time, and feel free to reach out to me individually if you have any further questions. Peter, I'm going to figure out a way to get those in without having to do it manually if it kills me. So if you find out that I died doing digital measures, the onus is on you.
And don't work too hard on it, Glenn. I don't mind doing it manually. That's what I've been doing for 2 days. So,
well, I would like to find a way to simplify that and to make it cleaner.
last thing, it was a great Zoom discussion. I just wish I didn't see all your publications. I thought I had a pretty good year until I saw all of those. Now I'm kind of depressed.
Yeah, well, when you duplicate all of your publications, it essentially doubles. And Katie asks, can you figure out how to keep me from having to enter my grants manually? Let me talk to Kenny Shatley about that, and if I can come up with a good answer on both presentations and grants, I will reach out to all of you, and we may have a follow-up meeting with just AgriLife joint appointees to see what we can do to simplify this. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.